There is a number printed on the bottom of a tin in your kitchen right now. You have never read it. Most people never do. It is 8 to 12 characters long, stamped into the metal in faint inkjet grey, and it looks like a machine error. But that number is the single most honest thing on the entire product, because it is the one part of the packaging that was never written by a marketing department. And if you took the premium tin out of your cupboard, the dark navy label, the gold serif lettering, and set it beside the tin you'd be embarrassed to serve guests, the 32p one in the plain white wrapper, and turned them both upside down and compared those numbers character by character, there is a very real chance you would find they were canned in the same building, on the same line, on the same day of the same year, out of the same field. Not a similar field. The same field. And the difference in price between those two tins, every penny of it, is a piece of cardboard and a font. This channel does not deal in vibes, so let me tell you exactly what I'm going to prove. I'm going to walk you through 5 premium foods almost certainly sitting in your cupboard right now, and for each one show you the specific, checkable, public evidence that the expensive version and the cheap version come out of the same manufacturing operation. Not the same industry, not the same country, the same operation. I will name the companies and the sites, and I will teach you to read the codes yourself so you never again have to take my word for anything. And then at the end of those 5 there is a 6th item. It is not food. It is the one that made me genuinely angry when I found it, and the one that proves this is not a food industry problem at all. Hold on to that. If you were here yesterday, you know how the first thread unraveled. We took the oval health mark on that small stamp carrying a country code and an establishment number, which appears on every product of animal origins sold in this country under retained European food hygiene law, and used it as a key. That oval is not marketing. It is an identification mark. It names the approved establishment where the product was last handled, and it does not care what the front of the label says. And when you started matching oval codes across price tiers, the illusion came apart in your hands. Premium butter and budget butter carrying the same number. Cheese ranges £3 apart, stamped identically. Then a problem arrived in enormous volume. People went from the fridge to the cupboard and the trick stopped working. There is no oval on a box of porridge oats, none on a bag of pasta, none on a tin of tomatoes or beans. That is not a loophole. That mark exists specifically for products of animal origin, because that is where the hygiene risk sits, so the law puts it there and nowhere else. Which means the tinned aisle, the ambient aisle, the dry goods aisle, most of your actual weekly basket, carries no such stamp at all. And I think there was an assumption that this meant the pantry was unreadable, that without the oval the trail went cold. It does not go cold, it goes quieter. That is a completely different thing, because every one of those products still carries a fingerprint. Nobody taught you to look for it, and it was never designed to be found by you. It was designed for a recall team at 3 in the morning who need to know which pallets to pull off which shelves. It exists for the manufacturer's benefit, not yours. But it exists, and it is printed by law on the outside of the thing you are holding. So before item 1, how British supermarket food is actually made. Here is the picture in your head. A Tesco factory with the logo on the side, where that supermarket's own people make that supermarket's own food. The premium range in the good part of the building, the value range down the back. None of that exists. Not one part of it. Supermarkets, with a handful of exceptions, do not manufacture food. They are retailers, property, logistics, and shelf space. What they own is the label and the right to put a name on a box. Production is contracted out to a category of company most British shoppers could not name a single example of, and that invisibility is by design. They are called co-packers, and their business model is to run enormous capital-intensive production lines and fill them with whatever anyone will pay them to fill them with. That is the crucial detail. A co-packer does not have a premium line and a budget line the way you imagine. A co-packer has a line. What determines premium or budget is not a separate factory, workforce, or supply chain. It is a specification document agreed months in advance in a meeting room, and then a change of packaging at the end of the line. The premium version and the budget version are very often not two similar products. They are one product with a decision applied to it. And sometimes that decision is real. Sometimes the spec genuinely differs and the premium product is better in a way you could measure. I'm not going to tell you every premium item in Britain is a lie. What I will tell you is that you currently have no way of knowing which is which, and the entire pricing architecture of the British supermarket depends on you never finding out. One more thing, and it is just arithmetic. Own label now accounts for more than half of everything sold by value in British supermarkets, and its fastest growing part is not the value range, it is premium own label. The finest, the taste the difference, the extra special. Forecasters projected premium own-label sales to break £1 billion in the single month of December 2025 for the first time in history. £1 billion in 1 month on a tier of product that frequently comes out of the same machine as the cheap one. That is not a rounding error in the national food budget. That is the national food budget. So let's open the cupboard. Item 1 is porridge oats. One box is around £3.50, matte finish, with an illustration of something rural on it. A mill wheel, a field at dawn, a farmer in a flat cap who does not exist. The other is 80p in a clear plastic bag with 2 colours of printing and the word oats. Flip the expensive one over and read the very small line near the bottom of the back panel. In most cases it says something close to produced in the UK for, and then the supermarket's name and a head office address, usually in London or Welwyn Garden City or Bradford. Produced in the UK for. Not produced by, not produced at. The word for is the confession. That sentence is telling you, in plain English on the packaging, that the supermarket did not make this. Somebody else made it and handed it over. And the address underneath is not the factory. It is the office of the company that commissioned it. You are being given a corporate headquarters, where you assume you are being given a source. Now turn the 80p bag over. It says the same thing. Same construction, same address, same absence of a factory. Both are commissioned. Neither is made in-house. And British oat milling is not a cottage industry with 1,000 small players. It is a concentrated set of very large mills. Mornflake has been milling oats at Crewe in Cheshire since the 17th century. Quaker's British oats run through the mill at Cupar in Fife. Add the significant millers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and between a handful of sites, you can account for an extraordinary proportion of every oat eaten in Britain. Branded, premium own label, and value own label alike. The oats in the £3.50 box and the oats in the 80p bag were very often grown by the same contracted growers, delivered to the same silo, cleaned on the same equipment, kilned in the same kilns and rolled between the same rollers. The genuine spec differences, flake size, whether the groat is cut before rolling, moisture tolerances are real and they do change the texture of your breakfast. But they are a settings change, not a different food, and nowhere near a 300% price gap. What you are paying the extra £2.70 for is the man in the flat cap. Now before item 2, which is where this stops being interesting and starts being infuriating. 30 seconds. This channel is new. The Food Ledger UK started with nothing, and it exists because this information should be free and findable, and at the moment, it is neither. Every hour of this is unpaid research. Company filings, site listings, supplier registers, regulations, and then going into real shops with a phone to photograph the bottoms of tins like a lunatic. I am trying to get this channel to 5,000 subscribers. Not 100,000. 5,000. That is the number at which this becomes sustainable enough to keep doing properly, and it is within reach if the people who find it useful press the button. So if the last 10 minutes has changed how you walk down an aisle, subscribe. It costs nothing, and it is the difference between this continuing and this quietly stopping. 5,000. Then come straight back, because item 2 is the one that broke this open for me. Item 2 is tinned tomatoes. And you need to understand the scale, because scale is the whole trick. Italy processed roughly 5.8 million tons of tomatoes in its 2025 campaign, across nearly 79,000 hectares, a little over 3 million tons in the northern basin around Emilia-Romagna, around 2.7 million in the south, around Campania and Puglia. And the defining feature of a processing tomato harvest is that it is violently compressed in time. They are machine harvested in a window of weeks and must be processed within hours of leaving the field, because a processing tomato starts degrading almost immediately, which means the industry cannot be small. To absorb millions of tons in a few weeks, you need enormous plants running continuously, and there are only so many of those in Italy. So here is what happens to a tomato. It arrives by the lorry load, is washed, then crosses a sorting system, increasingly optical, cameras reading every fruit as it passes, measuring colour, size and shape, firing air jets to kick individual tomatoes onto different belts, faster than your eye can follow. Deep red, uniform, undamaged, right size goes one way. Smaller, paler, split or oddly shaped goes another. The first stream becomes whole peeled plum tomatoes in a premium tin. The second becomes chopped tomatoes or is crushed into passata and goes into the value tin. Same lorry, same field, same morning, same plant, sorted by a camera. And now the objection, which is the correct objection, and which thousands of you are already forming, but the premium ones are visibly better. The juice is thicker, The cheap ones are watery. They are not the same. You are right. They are frequently not the same in the tin. And the explanation is more damning than the accusation. There is a measurement used throughout this industry called degrees bricks. The soluble solids in the product, overwhelmingly the sugars as a percentage by weight. A 29 bricks concentrate is dramatically thicker than one at 7. And what you are tasting when you say the premium tin is richer is very often simply the packing medium. The premium tin was filled with juice at a higher bricks. The value tin was filled at a lower one or with more water. That is a filling decision. Made at the end of the line in the same building on the same day from the same harvest, it costs a fraction of a penny per tin to move between those specifications. So yes, the premium tin can genuinely be better, and the better you are buying is a slightly denser liquid and a prettier tomato, sold at 3 or 4 times the price with a story attached about sun-drenched valleys and generations of family growers, when the differentiating event was a camera and an airjet. Which brings us to the codes. This is the part I most want you to use. Under British law, the Food Lot Marking Regulations, in force since 1996, pre-packed food must carry a lot identifier, allowing the batch to be traced. There must be a lot mark. It must be clearly visible, clearly legible, and indelible. And where it might be confused with other printed information, it must be prefixed with the letter L. One exemption matters. A best before or use by date, including at least the day and the month in that order, is itself legally sufficient as the lot identification. So when you flip a tin and find a stamped string on the base, you are looking at a legally mandated traceability mark. It typically encodes some combination of production date, line, and plant. Many manufacturers write the date as a day-of-year figure, the Julian date, where the 14th of March is 033. Now, here is what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to hand you a decoder ring claiming letter 3 always means the factory, because that is false. These formats are proprietary. Every manufacturer runs its own scheme. There is no public master key, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you certainty they do not have. What I will hand you is more powerful because it doesn't require breaking the code at all. You do not need to know what the code means. You only need to know whether 2 codes match. That is the entire method. Take both tins off the shelf. Turn them over. Photograph both bases. Compare the structure of the strings, not the values, the structure. Count the characters. Note where the letters sit and where the numbers sit. Note the spacing, the position of the L, the font of the inkjet, whether it is dot matrix or laser etched. 2 different manufacturers do not produce identically structured codes in identical fonts at identical positions on a can base. Coding equipment and character sets are specific to the plant and the line. When both tins carry codes of the same length, in the same format, in the same typeface, in the same place, printed by visibly the same machine, you are not looking at 2 supply chains that resemble each other. You are looking at one, and when the day-of-year figure in both is the same figure, you are looking at 2 tins sealed within hours of each other in the same building, then walk to 2 ends of the same shop and given a 300% price gap. Do it once in a real supermarket and you will never unsee it. Item 3 is baked beans. And with beans I need no codes because the companies publish the answer themselves. Prince's is one of the largest food manufacturers operating in Britain and almost certainly the biggest food company you have never consciously bought from. It produces over 350 products across more than 20 categories: fish, meat, fruit, vegetables, soups, pasta, cooking sauces, edible oils, soft drinks, from 11 production sites across the UK, mainland Europe, and Mauritius. It was owned by Mitsubishi Corporation for 35 years until its sale in 2024 to the Italian group Newlet Food for around £700 million. Its site at Long Sutton in Lincolnshire is its largest food production facility in the UK. It cans baked beans, vegetables, fruit, pulses, pasta and meatballs in formats from small 145-gram tins up to 3-kilogram industrial packs. And here is the sentence published by the company describing what comes out of that site. It produces both branded and customer-own brand products. That is not a leak. That is the manufacturer stating on its own public site listing that the brand you recognize and the supermarket label you assume is a lesser imitation of it are produced at the same facility. Within the industry that is not scandalous, it is efficient. The line is already there. The sterilizer is already hot. Why build a second factory to make the same beans slightly differently? The scandal is not that they do it. The scandal is that the price gap on the shelf is presented to you as a quality gap, when frequently it is a capacity decision made by a manufacturer both parties share. Item 4 is dried pasta. You are holding a bag that costs £2.50. It says bronze dye. It probably says slow-dried or Trafelata al Bronzo. Next to it is a bag at 70 pence. Bronze dye extrusion is genuine and it matters. Pasta pushed through bronze dyes rather than Teflon-coated ones comes out with a rougher, more porous surface that holds sauce differently. Slow drying at lower temperatures changes the bite. If you cook a lot of pasta, you can taste it. But look at what dried pasta actually is: durum wheat semolina and water. That is the whole ingredients list. No proprietary formula, no secret recipe, nothing a marketing department can claim as uniquely theirs. Which is exactly why pasta is one of the most heavily co-packed categories in the supermarket. When the product is two commodity inputs and a dye, the only thing separating one bag from another is which machine ran it and at what temperature. So the honest position on pasta is this: the premium bag may well be different, but the difference is a dye shape and a drying curve, and the manufacturer running those settings is very often the same one running the cheap bag on the next shift. Check the origin declaration, the packer address, the code format. If both bags declare the same country, carry the same style of code and share a packer, what you are paying for is a temperature setting and the word bronzo. And here is where I want to hear from you, because I cannot check every shelf in Britain, and you can. Go and look, tonight or on your next shop. Take the premium and the value version of anything we have covered, turn them over and compare the codes, the addresses and the origin declarations. Then come into the comments and tell me what you found, the category, the two prices and whether the codes matched. Don't tell me the brand did something dreadful. Tell me what was printed. If a few thousand people do that, we will have built something no journalist and no regulator has ever assembled: a public map of who actually makes British supermarket food. I read these comments and the best findings go into the next video, credited. And tell me one more thing while you're there, because I'm curious about the psychology. Which premium item are you still not willing to give up, even now? Everyone has one. Mine is coffee, and I know. Say yours. Item 5 is tinned tuna, the cleanest example on this list because the geography does the work for you. Tinned tuna is not a local product. It cannot be. The fish is caught in the Indian Ocean, the Pacific, the Atlantic, then landed, processed and canned in a small number of very large facilities near the fishing grounds. Prince's, the same company as the beans, operates 2 tuna processing plants in Mauritius, one of which it describes as among the most technologically advanced in the world, and which was the first global canned tuna supplier to hold SA 8000 certification for social accountability. Now hold that against the shelf. A branded tin, a premium own-label tin and a value own-label tin, all three priced as though they occupied different worlds. But the number of facilities on Earth capable of canning tuna to British retail standard at British retail volume is a short list. And when you read the small print, processor declaration, packer address, origin statement, that short list starts appearing on tins supposed to have nothing to do with each other. There are genuine differences in tuna and they are printed on the tin: skipjack or yellowfin, pole and line caught or netted, brine or spring water or oil, solid steak or flake. Those justify real price gaps. What does not justify a price gap is the colour of the sleeve and the word premium, when the tin underneath came off the same line in the same plant. Which brings us to the 6th item, the one that isn't food. Somewhere in your house there is a bottle of thick bleach. If it's the branded one, it cost around £2.50. Next to it on the shelf was an own label bottle at around 60 pence. And you have almost certainly reached past the cheap one at some point, because bleach is about killing things, and killing things feels like something you should not economise on. Let me introduce you to McBride. McBride is a British public company, listed on the London Stock Exchange, and it is Europe's biggest manufacturer of retailer own-brand household goods. Not a supplier. The biggest, it makes liquids, unit dose capsules, powders and aerosols, bleaches, surface sprays, laundry liquids, dishwasher tablets for retailers across the continent, alongside contract manufacturing for brand owners. Read that last part again. Alongside contract manufacturing for brand owners. The same category of company that makes the 60 pence bottle also manufactures on behalf of brands. That is not hidden. It is the stated business model of a publicly listed company that files accounts and publishes annual reports. And here is the part you can verify with no codes and no trust in me whatsoever. Pick up both bottles and read the ingredients panel. Under chemical labeling rules, the composition has to be declared. Both will list sodium hypochlorite, that is bleach, that is the entire active agent, in a stated concentration band, alongside surfactants and, in the thick versions, a thickener. Compare them. In an enormous number of side-by-side comparisons, it is the same declaration. The germ does not know what the bottle-cost sodium hypochlorite has been doing the same thing to the same organisms since long before either brand existed, and it does not perform better because the cap is a different color. There can be real differences: viscosity, so it clings longer under a rim; fragrance, the shape of the neck. But you are not paying a little for those. You are paying 4 times the price for a thickener and a smell. And the reason I ended on bleach rather than food is this: if it were only food, you could tell yourself a story about agriculture and seasonality and harvest variation. Bleach removes that excuse. It is a simple chemical solution with a declared composition and no romance available to it whatsoever. And the identical pricing architecture is bolted onto it anyway. Which tells you that what we have examined for the last half hour is not a food industry phenomenon at all. It is a retail pricing strategy applied across the entire store. Food is simply where it works best because food is where you feel most guilty about buying the cheap one. That word, guilty, is the actual product being sold here. Nobody buys the premium tin because they compared the bricks values. You buy it because standing in an aisle with a family to feed and a budget squeezed for years, reaching for the plain white packet feels like a small public admission of something. The dark packaging, the gold foil, the serif typeface, the invented farm, everyone is engineered to relieve a feeling. The premium range is not sold on flavor. It is sold on dignity and priced accordingly. You did not fall for anything. You were charged for reassurance by people who knew exactly what they were doing and who chose the fonts specifically. So let's put a number on it, honestly. Swapping premium own label for the standard equivalent typically saves around £2.50 on the oats, 80 to 90 pence on a tin of tomatoes, 40 to 60 pence on beans, over £1 on the pasta, and often more than £1 on the tuna. £6 to £7 if you bought all 5 in one shop. But you don't buy all 5 every week, and I won't pretend you do. If 2 or 3 of these swaps enter your normal rhythm, you're looking at £2 to £4 a week. Call it 3. Over a year, around £150. Add the household chemicals, and most households land between £200 and £300 a year. That is not life-changing, and I refuse to tell you it is. But it is money leaving your account every year in exchange for typography. And the real value of today isn't the money. It's that from now on, the packaging cannot talk to you the way it used to. You have a method. You can check. Which leaves one thing unresolved. Everything we did today works because these products are anonymous. Nobody stands in front of a tin of beans and pictures a farm. The deception is passive, an absence of information rather than the assertion of a false one. But there is a category in your shop where it is not passive at all, where the product does not merely fail to tell you where it came from, where it actively tells you it came from somewhere that does not exist. In March 2016, one of Britain's largest supermarkets launched 7 new brands. Rosedene Farms, Boswell Farms, Willow Farms, Nightingale Farms, Redmere Farms, Woodside Farms, Suntrail Farms, fruit, beef, chicken, salad, vegetables, pork, imported citrus. 7 farms with 7 names that sound like they have been in the same family for 200 years. Not one of them is a farm. They are names, invented for packaging. And when the story broke, real farmers came forward because some of those names belong to real places. The owner of a real Boswell farm called it an abuse of power and said that even if it wasn't strictly illegal, they were trying to conjure up an image of something that isn't the reality. The owner of a real Woodside farm noted that the same storybook British name was appearing on meat from elsewhere. That is not an omission. That is a construction. Somebody sat in a room, chose the word willow, and decided it tested well. And here is the question I can't stop turning over, and the one we open the ledger on next. If a supermarket will invent an entire farm to sell you a chicken, a name, an implied history, an implied field, then what is actually behind that name? Where is that meat really from? How many of those storybook brands are in your fridge tonight? And how many are still on the shelves a decade later, having quietly outlived the outrage? That's the next one. The fake farms. Names, owners, and where the meat actually comes from. Go and open your fridge tonight. Read the brand on the meat. If it sounds like somewhere from a children's book, a willow, a meadow, a brook, a rose, write that name down and bring it to me in the comments because I want to see how many we can account for before the next video goes live. And in the meantime, do the thing. Turn one tin over, just one. Compare it to the cheap one. The number on the bottom has been there your whole life. It was never hidden. It was just never explained. Now you can read it.